Laura just said, how am I going to go after that? Okay, our next speaker, I told you we were going to cover a lot of heart territory here. It's a very different kind of heart start. Sonu Marchioretto, I've known for a long time, but so enjoyed hearing more about this part of your story, and I really think all of you will too. It's an immigrant perspective that I think we all really need to hear about her heart start of coming to America when she was 6. So I hope you'll join me in welcoming Sonu.
Sonu Marchioretto, and I'd like to tell you about my heart start, and it is the love for this country, the good old US of A. And I want to tell you about my immigration story. Immigration, I guess, has been in the news a lot lately, and my story is probably not that much different than others who make this journey to start a whole new life. Our story is probably, some of your grandparents or parents or great-grandparents or even you experienced this story. But my parents and I, we're from India, and we lived a very middle-class life in India. We lived mostly in the rural areas. My dad was coal mining engineer. And my mom and dad, they were both educated. My mom was a doctor, and my dad was the engineer. And they both worked, and we lived in these housing complexes that were very middle class. We had a housekeeper. We had people who took care of us. I mean, we had I had nannies. My sister and I attended an English school, and we lived a very stable life. And we even had a car in India, which was pretty unusual for that time. We took vacations every year, and we would visit my cousins in New Delhi in the rural areas. I remember taking a train there. But my dad always had this adventure bug. He wanted to go, this is my dad and me and my sister, he had his heart set on moving out west. He wanted to come here to this country. Maybe the person who probably did was his heart start was his mom, my grandma. And my grandma is instrumental in this story and why I fell in love with the United States. My grandma, we call her Oma. She was married at the age of 13, and she had 5 kids by the time she was 20. And that's when her husband died, and she became a widow. So widows in India, this is my grandma, always wear white. And as long as I remember my grandma, she wore white. And it was always a white sari. I think in her 80s, she moved to like a little yellow sweater. But white was always her color. So when Oma, her story, we called her Oma, when she lost her husband, she was also very lost. She had 3 girls and 2 boys. My dad was 6 months old when his dad died. And she was left to take care of them as a single mom in India, which is also fairly unusual for at that time in the 50s. And Amma did not know how to read or write. Amma's family, my grandfather's family, stepped in and helped her. So they kind of, like her extended family, took over the care of the girls, and Amma's family educated my grandma. So she learned how to read and write. She became a school teacher, and she started working as a single mom, and she raised her 2 boys the best way she knew how. And again, single working mom in the 1950s India was pretty an unusual story. She taught my dad and uncle how to read and write, and they went on to college. And when my uncle graduated college and he got married, he immigrated to Europe. And then my grandma went with him. So of course, she was a package deal between my dad and my uncle. And so she would spend time with my uncle for a couple months, and then she would come to India and spend time with my mom and dad and my sister and me. And she would talk about all these adventures that in the United States, and I was her audience. And she would tell me stories, and she would talk about this family, and she would tell me stories upon stories about this family that traveled in a bus, and they were in a band, and they got into and I was like, oh my God, I want to come to this magic place and so she, you know, my dad was always wanting to come here, so when he got his papers, he was like, I am ready. And we got ours, like, he left a year before we did. So when we got our immigration papers, I was like, I couldn't wait to come to this country. My hard start was the United States. So I was excited. And you know, if my dad would have come to pick us up in a school bus, that would have been. So, but you know, we all have a mom story. So I have a mom story. So I was in heaven. My mom was not. She came to the USA, and she was a practicing physician. She left everything. She left, and if you imagine, we came on an Air India flight, 2 suitcases apiece. We packed up our whole house. All our belongings went to someone else, and we came with 2 pieces of luggage apiece. All of our stuff in 2 bags. My mom and my sister and I boarded the plane, and my mom said, literally, we boarded the plane with $6 between the 3 of us. And I know there's a Netflix special, if any of you have seen this comedian goes, every Indian will tell you they came to this country with an inordinately small amount of money. But it is true. $6. My mom confirmed that. And so she said, we stopped in, our layover was in London, and we got a tea and sandwiches for $4. And then I wanted these headphones, and she said, she wouldn't let me have them because they were $1 a piece. So we finally landed in Chicago at O'Hare, and I still get, like, O'Hare always, those runways late at night all lit up with the blue and the red always sparks me. I'm always thrilled. But you know, my mom was not so thrilled. So she was 37, and she had 2 young kids, me and my sister, and she discovered that the only thing that counted was her education. So she had to start over again. Her years of practice did not count. So we lived in an apartment complex. We had a 2-bedroom apartment, an old Oldsmobile. Like, our car was like, it didn't have those back defrost lights, you know, so my dad had a fan, and it would make a hole in the fog. It's just like one little hole where you could see. And we also experienced snow for the first time when we came. It was the blizzard of 1978. Fond memory of snow. The polar vortex is nothing compared to that blizzard. So I remember my sister and I, we had like 2 pairs of pants, 2 turtlenecks, but I was thrilled with all of that. My mom wasn't. She told me a story about one day that she decided to walk to Good Sam Hospital. So we lived on Belmont and Ogden. There was these apartment complexes there. And so she walked to Good Sam to see if there was a job available. So my mom was 5 feet tall, so she always wore heels. So she never wanted to be, you know, like that, whatever. So she wore heels. So she walked out to Good Sam, and she put on some applications. And as she was walking home, her heel broke. Aww. And so she remembers that she had the first, like, I hate this place moment. She broke her other heel, she walked home, and she wanted to pack. She packed, and she wanted to go back. And our saving grace about not going back was a one-way ticket. So she said had we had a return ticket, she would have grabbed me by the hair and taken me back, but she did not. So she literally picked herself up by both her heels and got to work. She started studying, she started taking her exams, she started passing, she got a residency, she worked with 20-somethings. She did what she thought she had to do. And she still always wanted to go back to her easier life in India. Her and I would argue about her leaving and me staying. We had some really good fights, as all moms and daughters do. She started practicing as a physician, so she started to relax a bit. And she persevered. She did. She persevered. She achieved her goals. And she, started working and being successful in her professional life. But when she would come home, she always made us warm dinner every single night. This name I remember her. And then, so as far as my story goes, like being raised by women like that, or by my parents, I did what I had to do. I went to school. I graduated. And my grandma still told me stories, so now she would come visit me and my dad, but both in Canada and the USA. So, but now we could watch the episodes together. So the stories were not so much stories. We lived in Downers Grove, so growing up here, there were some people who didn't want us here. We had eggs thrown at our house. We had rocks through our windows. We would get some prank phone calls. My parents sheltered us a lot from all of the negative, and then they believed that we should rise above those types of behaviors. So I was just really not deterred by the negativity of the ignorant people. And then my heart also did not waver for my love for this country. And, growing up in a two-parent house where you were loved and protected, we did eventually start going on vacations. We started, we had one car, and then we got 2 cars. And we had some happy times, and then we really had some sad times. I lost my sister in a car accident. I feel like I've kind of lived the whole rainbow or gamut of the American experience. And I did this to myself too. I chose a path in college that I thought I had to do. And then at the age of 40, I decided I wanted to become a nurse. And I went back to school, and I graduated as a nurse, and I found my true calling. And now I've dabbled in becoming an entrepreneur for myself too, so I'm full of everything. So I got married. Here's my mom doing her residency. And then I have 2 amazing and beautiful children. My daughter, she just graduated from the Air Force Academy, and now is attending medical school. And then my son at Columbia College in the city. I think I'm living the best American life. I really do. And as I'm in my 50s, and I reflect on my life of my family, I think of a story that my grandma told me. She was telling me about it, not a TV show. It was an Indian story of a prince at a crossroads. He was talking to God, and he had to make a decision about choosing something difficult or something easy. God would point out to him that he had the free will to make the choice and make the decision and weigh the consequence of each decision. The path was his to choose. I thought my parents chose the difficult path by giving everything up and moving to a new nation. This path had a lot of curves. We've had a lot of curves, but my parents have made a great life for all of us, I think. I think about how resilient both my mom and grandma were, and I think we all view resiliency as something American, but I think it's American because it's what every immigrant experiences and does. So maybe it is American because it's an immigrant trait. So that's my 2 cents.
I'm sure Jacob would have loved that his face was just like hanging out there. mom still alive?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Still working, right?
She actually is. She will never quit. Yeah. She
Where?
in Ohio, in a small town, Gallipolis, Ohio. So she loves her job so much that when she retired, the clinic said, "You will be our permanent substitute." So whenever the doctor goes on vacation, my mom is there. Yeah.
Dana.
Mira, how did your folks get, what was the incentive for them to go to Ohio from Chicago?
I think just jobs.
Just jobs.
Jobs. Yeah.
Oh, did I call you Mira? Yeah.
I answered to Mira.
It's okay, Dana's excited.
So you mentioned that you went back to school to be a nurse. Tell everybody what you did before that.
I was a chemical engineer, and that was, when I was a chemical engineer, that was the time when my sister died. So it was just one of those, it was easier to stay in school than do anything else. Just go through the motions. I don't think I dealt with her passing till later, yeah. Do everything you can. And you do things that make you happy.
Right. Right. Exactly. Anyone else? Any first question?
Sonu, where do you practice now? Because you're a good singer.
At Hinston.
Oh, you're in Hinsdale. And what kind of nursing?
I'm in the recovery room. Recovery room right after surgery.
She runs it.
Well, I'll brag from her.
Do we have another question back here? Sorry. No? Thank you.